I want to start week 3 with a concept that I love. It makes a huge difference to me. So when it comes to my business and thinking about myself and my role within it, I like to think of myself as being 2 people. On the one side, there is boss Julia, and on the other half, there is worker Julia. Over time, worker Julia has grown to trust boss Julia. So she is really happy just doing what she's told as long as boss Julia has planned the time, kept and prioritised the to-do list, and is dishing out the chores. Worker Julia just happily chugs through these chores without stressing or overthinking. Now, the worker Julia mode is on almost all of the time. She doesn't suffer from decision fatigue. By the time she receives an instruction, all the decisions around that instruction have been taken. So boss Julia is in charge of planning time and prioritising. And in this video, we'll look at how she does it, how to sort out the competing demands on your time based on their importance. We're also going to think about managing interruptions and avoiding time traps. And we'll tackle procrastination and perfectionism. So we're going to use the Eisenhower matrix, otherwise known as the urgent important matrix, to help us with prioritization. So let's take a look at this system. The matrix divides tasks into 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is for work that is urgent and important, work that needs to be done right now. They're tasks that require immediate action or there will be significant consequences. Now, this could include client deadlines, urgent emails, last-minute project changes, or indeed something urgent, an emergency that happens on site. The second quadrant is still important, but it isn't urgent. These are things that we need to make time for within our time blocking. These tasks contribute to the long-term success of our business, but they don't need immediate action. Examples could be your business strategy, planning your marketing, or professional development. In quadrant 3, we find the things that are urgent but not important. They're tasks that feel pressing, but they don't directly impact on your goals. And they might include things like routine emails, meetings that aren't really necessary, and minor administrative tasks. Our fourth quadrant is neither urgent nor important, and the advice here is to try to delete these items if you can. They're distractions that don't add value, and they could include things like mindless scrolling, busy work, the kinds of chores that you find to do when you're procrastinating, or excessive perfectionism. So when you know that something is really pretty much finished and all you're doing is polishing it. A tip that I'm still working on is, in the first place, never say yes to things that practice teaches you are going to go straight to quadrant 4. So when someone asks you for free advice, or you're asked to take on a task that you just know you don't have time for, that is a time to say no, because these things are just going to end up languishing in that 4th corner. By using the Eisenhower matrix, you stop reacting and you start acting strategically, leading to improved productivity and less stress. Once you've prioritised your to-do list, you can allocate items to slots in your calendar, depending on their urgency and importance. Some items could be popped into that day's work sprint. Other items might deserve their very own time block. Some items will stay on your to-do list and they'll just roll over until they ascend the urgency or importance scale, or until you're ready to delegate or delete them. So one of the sad facts of modern working is that you are going to get interrupted. Here are some ways you could avoid the worst interruptions by being mindful and preparing in advance. I put my phone on reduce interruptions, or I'll leave it in another room. Working on my own in a busy environment, I often wear noise-cancelling headphones, and I've got a white noise soundtrack on Spotify that absolutely kills any audio interruptions that might affect me. Take whatever steps you need to take to work undisturbed. You can sit with your back to the action if necessary. You should also keep a notebook handy to write down any stray thoughts that occur to you while you're in the middle of your work sprint, so that they don't need to distract you either. You can remember them because they're written down, but you don't have to deal with them in the moment. And finally, develop a mind like water, because interruptions are so much worse if you allow them to rattle you. You can choose to try to keep your brain waves long and steady, even if you are interrupted. If you can keep interruptions down to the shortest possible duration, when you get irritated, you really do damage to that working in the zone. You're in fantastic shape. Your phone is out of sight. Your next email check is hours away. You've got work time blocked out in your calendar. What could possibly go wrong? Here are some thoughts on procrastination, perfectionism, and completion anxiety from my recent Recipe for Success bootcamp. The horrors of procrastination, completion anxiety, and saying no. Success is equal to our performance, from which we deduct our own self-sabotage. So we have to, if we can embrace some of these more structured ways of organising our time, perhaps we will predispose ourselves to a bit more success. Realism. One small change that you adopt that is real and actually happens in your life, compared to some whole fantasy that you construct about huge transformative change that is never going to happen. So really, I'd like us to be thinking about little changes that we can make, and then hopefully we'll be more successful than we would have been if we're thinking that we're going to completely reinvent our wheels. Bonus material, procrastination. Why are you hesitating? What's preventing you from getting down to work? Time boxing can help, giving yourself a deadline. You only have this period of time, it has to be done in this block, it puts you under pressure and you have to get it done. Or Pomodoro, if you're resisting doing something, then setting a timer and saying you only have to do 10 minutes of it or 20 minutes of it, and seeing how you get on with that. There's also this idea that I have of having a boss version of yourself and a worker version of yourself, where the worker version just cracks on and does the stuff and doesn't think about it. Obviously eliminating distractions and giving yourself a pat on the back or a reward or a treat when you actually knuckle down and get these things done. So procrastination. Completion anxiety. Reasons why we might have fear of completing something, why we might not be a completer finisher. Fear of criticism, or being too tied to the idea of perfectionism, or lacking confidence in our ability to do something and being frightened to try, or feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the thing instead of breaking it down into little bits that are much easier to cope with. Future uncertainty, when you actually finish the thing, it's done, and then what? And the high stakes that might be associated with this thing. If you're writing a book and you've invested 2 years in it, and then it goes out, and you've got everything hanging on it, there's an enormous pressure, there's an enormous weight associated, just so much easier perhaps not to finish the thing. So completion anxiety, we can look at redefining perfection, being good is good enough, breaking things down into incremental steps, visualizing a successful outcome, actually considering that it could all work out for the best. Looking for feedback on your work at an early stage so that you can feel confident that yes, it's heading in the right direction. Looking after yourself, very important, and planning what happens after you have finished. So not finishing and then looking over the edge of a cliff and wondering what next, but actually knowing what the landscape looks like beyond the completion of the project. And finally, saying no. Another Warren Buffett quote, I think he actually did say this one, but he said, I don't think this actually applies brilliantly to interior design, but the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything.
Now, like I say, we are nurturing, caring people, mostly working with clients in their own homes. I think having a strategy of saying no to almost everything is not ideal for us, but it's helpful for us to be thinking about our boundaries. They come from, I keep reusing this phrase to have different meanings, but in this case, your non-negotiables are the things you absolutely refuse to do. So for example, you could have a non-negotiable, I will not work for free. I just won't do it. So it's a complete no, a total no, every time, immediately no. So somebody asks you to do something, oh, could you just do this while you're doing that? It's tantamount to asking you to working for free. No. However, would you like me to add that on as an extra piece of work? Or, there are different polite, kind, pleasant, friendly ways of saying no. But when you have non-negotiables, I refuse to do that, you almost can't get past your own brick wall. You're sort of stuck. It's like, well, I can't say yes because I don't do that. Also, understanding your value. Goodness, you offer a fantastic service, and the client, there's no way they'd be able to do anything half as nice if they didn't have you there to help. When you know your value, it's so much easier to be able to say no to the things that aren't really part of your role, shouldn't be part of your role. We can look at working on becoming more assertive. We can look at communicating clearly and positively in the first place, so managing those client expectations, letting them know what's part of the deal and what isn't. This all comes back to managing yourself, managing your clients. And then there is the fear behind no. Why are we frightened to say no? Lots of issues there. And no as an opportunity. Nice way of spinning it. But, when you say no to something, you shut something down, you're closing down an area of business that actually is not something you want to be getting into.
Our Hothouse members use their monthly goals to avoid procrastination, and they clear their long-standing tasks by setting deadlines in public and using the power of peer accountability. So here's the wrap up to today's video. You do your 2-minute chores immediately. You keep a to-do list. You tend to your non-negotiables daily, and you have a calendar with basic time blocking in place. This week, I would like you to layer on the following homework. Before our final instalment next week, I'd like you to start prioritising. So I want you to look at the various tasks on your to-do list, assess each task, and move it up and down the list according to its urgency and importance. I'd like you to allocate each task to a time slot, and I want you to notice the laggards at the bottom of your list. Will you pause them until they become more urgent, or can you delete them off the list completely? And see if it helps you to think of yourself as being in two parts. One part of you is the boss. This part makes all the decisions and plans your time, whereas the other half of you, the worker, is happy in their work and never suffers stress or decision fatigue. So we've dealt with the day-to-day, the tasks and activities within sight at ground level in your business. But if you really want to supercharge your business, you're going to have to be more strategic. So, what is your vision for the future? What are your goals and targets? In what direction do you want your business to develop? Are you happy with the kind of business that is currently finding its way to you? In next week's video, the final week for this course, we'll look at strategic time planning. We'll look at how to make your time count cumulatively as an engine that drives your business forwards.